1980 Ferrari 308 GTSi. The worst car in the world, except for 7 seconds when it's the best. Reject modernity. Embrace tradition. Reject comfort. Embrace being sexy. Reject ergonomics. Embrace the steering wheel not being in front of you. Reject build quality. Embrace the unknown. Reject artificial exhausts and sound actors, and embrace this music. The 1980 Ferrari 308 GTSi, I for fuel injected. This is a transverse, fuel-injected, mid-engined, 2.9-liter V8 two-seat sports car with seating for none. This car was made for people built like Mateo Lane's friend Nick. You need legs like dowels to fit under the steering wheel that doesn't move up or down. We tried moving it up and down with some wrenches, but this is as high as it goes. You need size 8 men's feet to not hit 2 pedals at the same time. And the pedal box, like the steering wheel, is not in front of you. It's off to the right. It's got a dog-legged first gear, so watch out for that. And despite the gated shifter, I still found a way to miss second a few times. But it didn't matter, because once I was in second gear, all there was to do was shift back and forth between third and second and dance to that seductive music where the 308 goes from being an annoying, shaking, falling apart mess of drunkenly assembled parts to the greatest car in the world for 7 seconds. Take a look around a 308. I can't find an angle of this car that isn't beautiful. But it's weird, because the locking fuel filler door is on the driver's side, but there's also a locking fuel door on the passenger side that goes nowhere. Put your cocaine in there, I don't know. And the fuel cap comes with a hospice care rubber diaper. The door handle looks like a piece of window trim, and to open the door, you pull the black-looking, like you're trying to rip the trim off the car, and that's how you open the door. Strange that Ferrari was thinking about safety in the late 70s when they made this car, with door marker lights on the inside of the door. Look out, pedestrian kneecaps. I'm coming for your patellas and meniscuses with this wedge. And when the headlights go up, suddenly it turns from a cool, aloof Italian sports car
into a wide-eyed MX-5 NA fanboy. Hi, guys.
Yeah, it goes from, hey, to,
hi, fellas.
How's your evening going?
May I sit next to you?
Is there any angle where this doesn't look magnificent? Is there any angle where Tom Selleck didn't look good? To talk about the 308 and to ignore Magnum PI is sacrilege, so here we go. Oh, Magnum PI. Now that's a face that eats pussy. I'm gay, I don't care about pussy. But I want to be a cheerleader inside of the wood-paneled motel bedroom where Tom Selleck is going down on a woman. That's all I want. I just want to be there going, go, 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 Tom Selleck. Eat that pussy. Eat that pussy. Lot of lips, lot of tongue, lot of lips, lot of tongue. Who can do it? Eat that pussy. I'm glad this car's green so we don't have to spend too much time on Magnum PI. That was the Russo red one. This one is almost British racing green, so awesome. Ferrari 308. From an era when Ferrari meant adultery. I'm still imagining myself with pom-poms and a little skirt on and like a cut-off t-shirt, and I'm just in the bedroom just going, my man, my man, my man. What's the opposite? It's not even cuck holding. It's just, I don't know, cuck helping. But I don't have skin in the game. I'm just a cheerleader for Tom Selleck eating pussy. I'd watch that show. I don't need to watch Magnum PI. What if Magnum PI was just Tom Selleck eating cooter the entire time? I'd watch that. I can't stop thinking about that. It's like he's not solving mysteries at all, or mysteries is going on. He's just ignoring it. He's just, look at that. The plot's the same every time. Anyway, 1980 Ferrari 308 GTSi. You know, if you waited 3 years, you could have gotten a Fiero. The name Ferrari got a hernia from all the heavy lifting it did for the brand in 1980. Because Ferrari had its engines nerfed by new emissions regulations, so they were underpowered in comparison to some of the Ferraris of the golden 60s. But that didn't matter as much as you probably think, for two big reasons. First of all, it's Ferrari. If that name still means something today, you could argue it meant even more 40 years ago, when gearheads only had magazines to stroke their fandom, and most never saw these cars anywhere other than movies or on TV. And bear in mind, this car is 1980. The MR2 wouldn't come out for a few more years. The Miata didn't come around until the end of the decade. You had F-body GM cars, sure, but all of the sort of vaporwave aesthetic 80s cars that people like didn't really come along to the mid or late 80s. In the early 80s, which was still the 70s were hanging around, it was this. This was the premier car of the 80s. 1980 was the first year the 308 got fuel injection. This was Ferrari saying, we're modern, we're getting with the times, we're ahead of the times. But that brings us to a second point, because despite being underpowered relative to expectations, this still went on to become one of the most iconic Ferraris thanks to a guy named Thomas Magnum. We're back again. And I'm now just realizing that Tom Selleck's character was also named Tom. That was easy for rehearsal. You know in the opening scene of Magnum PI, where he just looks at the camera, waves, like wiggles his eyebrows, and then just leaves? He just does the burnout, half on the grass, I know, in the 308, and just flies off. In my head canon, he's just, you know what he's doing? He's just looking, I was like,
Why are your pants not already down, baby doll? You have until the end of this sentence to make room for my mouth and lips before I'm bored and I leave. Sentence is done and your pants are still on. Here I go. Vroom, I'm going to find pussy elsewhere. Thomas Magnum is hungry. And there's only one thing that will quench my thirst. Your bodily fluids.
I don't know why I'm doing the gravelly voice. Tom Selleck doesn't sound like that. Magnum PI debuted in 1980, same year as this car, and for the 8 seasons that followed, he drove Ferrari 308s. In the first season, he was driving a 1979 GTS. That's the carbureted version. But for the second season, he was driving the GTSi's exclusively. Now, in the show, those were the the 4-valve ones.
And this is the 2-valve fuel injection. This is like the most undesirable power plant that you could get in this, the slowest one. Makes 200 horsepower. It's fun, but it's not fast.
And when you're on a show with the kind of cultural heft of Magnum PI, oh yeah, what you're driving is going to become a classic. But being on TV kept this car continuously in the public eye for nearly a decade. Knight Rider only lasted 4 seasons, and people still get stiff in jeans at the thought of a Firebird Trans Am that can neg them at highway speeds. 1980 Ferrari 308 GTSi. Back when excessive body hair was hot. It wasn't a kink back then, it just was. But then why choose one of the least tall people-friendly cars in history for certified beaver retriever Tom Selleck? As the story goes, the plan was to originally have a Porsche 928 be the hero car, modified with a bigger sunroof. But similar to Apple's rule that villains in movies can't use iPhones, Porsche had a strict rule that they wouldn't fulfill any requests to build cars to custom specifications. So, Ferrari it was. The show had to use multiple 308s because they were going to be putting these things through the ringer. So there was one for all the close-ups and stationary photography. That one was, just the one to look nice. And another one would be used for action scenes, but if the car really needed to be driven into the ground, whipped around, do burnouts and stuff, drift, like if there was some really intense scene that needed some valid stunt driving, they would use a fiberglass kit car version that sat on a Pontiac Fiero chassis. Now, even if Magnum PI hadn't been a popular show, I still think they would have made bank auctioning these off after the show ended. But Magnum was a hit, and they did auction these cars off when the show ended in 1988. They ended up in the hands of museums, private collectors, theme parks like Universal Studios Hollywood, and even actors from the show. Each of these cars were unique due to the modifications to make them Selic compliant. Just as producers had planned with the Porsche, each Ferrari used in the show had to be modified to fit all 6 feet 4 inches of Tom Selleck. They unbolted the driver's seat, moved it farther back, and then rebolted it in its new spot to give him as much legroom as possible. Then they took the padding out of the bottom of the seat so he could sit low enough in the car to actually look through the windshield and look like he belongs in the car. That's the thing. After I drove this 308, I go back and watch the opening credits of Magnum PI and I'm like, how the hell is Tom Selleck fitting? How does he look normal in this car? Oh, okay. The seat's farther back and there's no padding in it. If he didn't have all this, his head would be sticking above the windshield, kind of like Dino the dinosaur whenever he would ride with Fred Flintstone. On the subject of Dino, the 308 replaced the Dino 246 GT when it initially debuted in 1975, and served as a kind of supplement to the Dino 308 GT4 that arrived 2 years earlier in 1973. The Dino GT4 and the 308 GTS were pretty similar, sharing the tube platform and each running on its own 2.9-liter transverse-mounted V8. But by 1980, the GTSi arrived, and changes included the Bosch K-Jectronic mechanical fuel injection and electronic ignition, along with a well-worn lesson about brand identity. You see, during the energy crisis that prompted all those emissions regulations that caused horsepower discounts left and right, Ferrari was going through its own crisis. Sales on the 308 GT4 were down because buyers didn't want to buy an expensive Ferrari that didn't actually have the Ferrari badge on it. Not everybody knew what Dino meant. They didn't know that Enzo Ferrari had a son who died 20 years earlier. They didn't know this was a way to keep his name alive. So Ferrari course-corrected and rebadged subsequent models, so that by the time the GTSi arrived, they made sure you knew this was a Ferrari, that you knew this was high-end. In 1980, if you wanted to buy one of these things new, it would cost you $48,000, which, adjusted for inflation to 2024, is about $175,000. And all that money gets you 200 horsepower. And if you had the 4-valve, it got you about 252. Even with power reduction, this could still only receive the attention of the wealthy in 1980. 1980 Ferrari 308 GTS. I'd give you a ride, but my golf bag needs somewhere to sit. 1980 Ferrari 308 GTSi. My favorite cigar is whatever produces the most smoke. 1980 Ferrari 308 GTSi. Yes, sex is great. But have you ever tried retiring at 45? Just imagine it's 1980 and you're one of the have-nots, pushing paper in an office somewhere, slowly working your way up the corporate ladder, until one day you've saved enough and you decide to treat yourself. No matter who you are or where you came from, you believe that this badge will elevate your social standing by half. Will it? You will go from invisibility to giving hot strangers the Trojan-covered sausage and sending them back home to their husbands smelling like balloon animals. That's the fantasy anyway. But is it true? But in reality, a Ferrari 308 is the car you buy when you win the jackpot on $5 scratchers and you're fixing to blow all the rest of it tonight at Dan's Diamond Hyman. Ferrari 308, brought to you by penny stocks, Quaaludes, and finger-popping the dean of students until she agrees to take your son off academic probation so he can play lacrosse again. Ferrari 308, the official car of eating 3 bowls of pork and bean, farting continuously through your speech at the Elks Lodge, and still getting re-elected to the 16th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. If you want to lose weight, buy a Ferrari 308. Catchy, isn't it? If you want to lose weight, buy a Ferrari 308. But this little sing-songy rhyme means so much more than ha-ha small car. A vintage Ferrari, with all its seductive, confident style, is here to motivate you to become the type of sexy, put-together, got-something-going-on person for whom a Ferrari compliments. On its own, Ferrari or any desirable vintage car for that matter, won't improve you. If you're going to the gym, going to therapy, being nice to people, working on your career, not spending more than you make, saving for retirement, building an emergency fund, opening and depositing money into a Roth IRA, volunteering in your neighborhood, complimenting friends, saying nice things to strangers, building your friends up, helping them help themselves, doing nice things for other people and expecting nothing in return, then you will naturally have the aura of a good person. Virtuousness shows. People will want to be around you. You will become cool. And when you achieve all that, buying a Ferrari will only make you look even cooler. Here comes Tom. He's so cool. Oh, good, Tom's here. Hey, he brought the Ferrari. Awesome. Hey, Tom, how you doing? Shaking hands all the way into the hotel. Loved and loving. But if you eat junk food, talk shit about your friends, bring up other people's mistakes after you hear someone say something positive about them, blow your savings on toys and temporary pleasures, drink, smoke, gamble too much, attempt to buy love through expensive gifts, restaurants, and then expecting instant friendships or sex in return, saying things like, after all I've done for you, blaming your shortcomings on external forces, deferring responsibility, only talking about yourself. Well, if that's the kind of person you are, or those are the behaviors that you're allowing yourself to succumb to, then the very same Ferrari will make you look like the villain of any space you occupy. People will make fun of you when you leave. You will be the butt of jokes and you'll never know. Pininfarina does this. The styling house that styles these cars, it's still around today. One of their great skills is building cars that draw attention to the driver. Their automotive designs are about the human inside, not the car itself. I don't want to pick on Corvettes, but a Corvette styling is about a Corvette. It's not about the person inside. But this Ferrari 308 is about you. It draws attention to you. But the attention it draws is all that you're putting out. And that's the brilliance of this car design. All these little designs, when you look at them, the little lines on it, the proportions of it, they bring focus to you. It's going to celebrate you. And whether that's virtuous or evil, well, it's not the car's fault. It's merely the magnifying glass. It does that all through style. 200 to 205 horsepower, 180.75 pound-feet of torque. To enjoy this car correctly, on a warm autumn day such as when we filmed this, targa top off, hearing that musical engine, you have to go to work on your own personality and your own life. If you plan to have a good day and do nice things for other people for their own sake, for the joy of how Calvin's dad would have said it builds character, if you do that, then for 7 seconds this piece of crap car becomes mirth. And also, while we were filming this car, the turn signal stopped working, so we had to go check the fuses, which were upgraded fuses. What you see here is a fully upgraded glass tube conversion out of the old Bullet style, and this is an upgrade. But if you're working on becoming a good person, this car will appeal to the world and everybody who gazes upon you when you drive it. The late 70s and early 80s vibes are strong here. It's a distinguished car, dignified, but only if you are. And at a certain point, a flashy car will inevitably age out of needing to impress you. The Ferrari feels fantastic for the handful of minutes you can enjoy it before the power ebbs away and you're left with a road feel that can't do anything else but make you envious of the people who got to drive this car in its mechanical prime. But even in its prime, it's hard to imagine this was ever as dynamic as Thomas Magnum made it look. Yes, we bought into it because it's a Ferrari. And while the 308 has endured as one of the most iconic 1970s and 1980s Ferraris, Ferrari Testarossa notwithstanding, I don't think the performance lives up to the reputation. But then that's not the point, is it? The point is to look good. I loved looking at this car more than I loved driving it. I loved revving it more than I loved setting up for a corner. I loved hearing the engine more than I loved using the engine. It's like a really good suit. I enjoy seeing myself in it more than I enjoy wearing it. And I'm saving a lot of these pictures I took from today. I may even print some of them out. A Ferrari 308 believes in you. and it wants you to become your best. And if you can't, it will employ the toughest love it can think of.